Although fictionalized, the following film was inspired by actual events.
Nobody kills himself over grades. I mean, especially Kip. I don't think he passed a class his whole life. Excuse me. Hey, Paul. That's how my own touch, too. How'd you hear?
It's on the TV already. Did he leave a note or anything?
Hey, check it out. She has some nerve coming around here.
How you doing?
Can you believe her showing her face around here?
Believe it? Yeah, I believe it. It's the first thing today that's made any sense.
Today we were supposed to talk about the contrast in styles among writers who came to prominence during the Jazz Age. But at the moment, Hemingway and Fitzgerald seem pretty irrelevant to me. I'd like to share something with you I think is appropriate. Patsy, would you do the honors? Okay.
The Buck in the Snow by Edna St. Vincent Millay. How strange a thing is death, bringing to his knees, bringing to his antlers the buck in the snow. How strange a thing.
Could I see a moment, please?
Go on. How strange a thing, a mile away by now.
Right, with me, I'll help you.
Miss Gill.
Mrs. Gill, yes.
I'm Detective Morse, San Diego PD. I just need to talk to you a couple minutes.
Well, that when you're through here, I'd like to see my office, please.
Have a seat, please. Ma'am, I'm doing some follow-up on the death of Kip Bauschmeyer. I understand you were one of his teachers.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I would have had him this period for junior English.
You ever been to his house?
The night he died?
What about before that? You ever visit Kip at home prior to his death?
Yes, I have.
Was your husband aware of this?
Look, maybe you better tell me what this is about.
Well, ma'am, there have been allegations made by several of Kip's classmates that you and Kip Bauschmeyer were lovers.
A high school is a rumor mill, Detective. That was one of many stories making the rounds. But I can assure you, that's all it is, a rumor.
Mrs. Gill, the people who are making these allegations are not saying they heard you were having sex with the boy. They're saying they went over to his house a couple of weekends in a row and watched you have sex with him.
Look, I've been in trouble before, Mr. Turner. Got a few priors, but this time I swear they got the wrong guy.
I got the picture. Can you tell me how the window of Dr. Frank's Mercedes came to be broken?
I have no idea. I think I was just the first guy the cops saw when they got to the scene. Story of my life. Wrong place, the wrong time.
I'll call the DA's office, see what they're offering.
Well, you got my number, right?
I'll be in touch. Everyone's entitled to a defense, Doreen. Oh, I need you to hold down the fort for a couple hours. I'm having my boat painted. I want to be there when they take her out of the water.
Wait. Roger Gill just called. He wants some representation for his wife.
Who?
Honestly, Owen, you really should start reading the paper again.
Get my ex-wife on the phone.
Paulette and Kip had been lovers for some time, or so the story goes. Rumors started circulating, and eventually the boys, Garrett Evans, Paul Preston, and Stuart Cardale, confronted Kip about it. Kip told them the rumors were true, and when they didn't believe him, they decided to prove it to them by arranging for them to come over and watch him having sex with her.
This kid sounds like some victim. Why'd he kill himself?
Nobody seems to know. But the night of the funeral, the boys told their parents what they'd seen. The parents called the police. The school fired Mrs. Gill a month later. Our paper broke the story.
You say that with some pride, Roberta.
Well, it's a big story, Owen. I mean, you know. Attractive young teacher, secret trysts witnessed by the sons of prominent citizens, suicide. Why the sudden interest?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose I like a good scandal as much as the next guy.
No, you don't. You're her lawyer, aren't you?
Well, it's not 100% yet. I'm meeting her and her husband tonight.
Well, when they're ready to do an interview, I want to be your first call. I'm not your ex-wife for nothing.
Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but I have a feeling this one's gonna get settled quick.
Are you sure about that? We hear some pretty important people have an interest in seeing this go all the way.
Like who?
You know, Kip is from Briarcliff. The people out there have a lot of political pull.
I'm sure the district attorney's office will put up a big show of outrage, but at the end of the day, this is a rape case where the victim can't testify and the accused is a 28-year-old female. They have bigger fish to fry. Of course, the press thinks she did it.
Well, I suppose we do. I mean, the boys all passed polygraphs, you know? Besides, why would anyone make up a story like that?
I've had the car a long time, but she's got real low mileage.
I can't interest you in a trade-in.
No, we don't need two cars. Besides, my wife can't drive a stick.
Well, she looks real clean. Tell you what, I'll grab my jacket and we'll take her for a spin.
We got to be at the lawyer's at 5. You represented a guy at work on a DWI. This guy said he was definitely over the limit, but somehow Owen Turner got the whole thing thrown out of court. What?
That guy recognized me.
You want to blow him off? We'll take the car down somewhere else and sell it.
No, what I really want is for you not to sell the car. Why don't we meet with this lawyer first and see how much it's going to be?
I already asked. It's $5,000 just to walk through the doors.
You ready to go, Mr. Gill?
Paulette, the car doesn't mean anything to me.
I know that's not true.
I'll be right back.
For those of you who have never had class with me before, let me tell you what you can expect. This is junior English. We're going to be studying some of the great works of literature.
Excuse me, Mrs. Gill. This here's Kip Bauschmoyer.
Hey, Kip.
Oh no, here's trouble.
Nice to see you too, Patsy. Hi. Just go find a seat. Go, now. I think I'm in love. I want to go like those jokes on unemployment, Bauschmoyer. If I were you, Mrs. Gill, I'd separate him from his cronies. He's a lot less funny without an audience.
Where are you going?
You want me to move, right?
I was just explaining my philosophy of teaching, Kip, and part of it is that every kid that walks through that door starts off with an A. That means that at this moment, you're one of my best students.
Law offices? I'm sorry, Mr. Turner's with a client at the moment.
Mrs. Gill, on Friday you will be charged with 2 counts of sexual assault.
Am I gonna have to spend time in jail?
You will be out in an hour tops. Now, the good news is their case sounds very weak. I gather they don't have a shred of physical evidence, and obviously the victim can't testify, so.
That's just what the other lawyer said going into the school board hearing.
Mr. Gill, I understand you were out of town on the nights in question. Is that right?
That's right. I have National Guard duty 2 weekends a month.
I do have an alibi for one of those nights. I was out to dinner with Patsy Newbeck,
Well, who's that, a girlfriend?
another one of my students.
I understand you also spent some time with Kip outside of the schoolroom. Would you describe him as promiscuous?
What the hell kind of question is that?
An important one. Promiscuity can be a defense on sexual assault.
That's going to be your defense? She did it, but it's okay because he wasn't a virgin?
Mr. Gill, look.
No, you look. I thought I explained this over the phone. My wife didn't do this. These people are on a witch hunt. And we need a lawyer who's willing to take them on.
Mr. Gill, I understand that you have both been through hell. Now, if you want something for your pain and suffering, I suggest you contact a civil attorney. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. My job is to see your wife acquitted by whatever means the law allows.
It's been really tough on Roger. After I was fired, he had to drop out of school and get a job. And the publicity it's been really hard to take.
Well, I can tell you it's only going to get worse. That's why I'd like to explore the possibility of a plea bargain.
But I'm innocent. You didn't ask me that, but I am.
Sometimes I think those of us in law enforcement can lose track of what's really important. Like being able to send your kids off to school without worrying about them being molested. So am I concerned that the prosecution of Paulette Gill is a waste of time and money? No. In fact, I would say the message I'm getting is quite the opposite. Pam, if you have any follow-up questions, come on.
Thank you.
Owen, do you know Earl Cleaver? He heads our sex crimes division.
By reputation.
Your reputation precedes you also, Mr. Turner. Shall we find a room?
I understand your office initially declined to press charges.
Only because of the difficulties associated with prosecuting without Kip's testimony. Since then, new evidence has surfaced that convinced us that this prosecution was warranted.
I was just telling Earl what a zoo it was this morning.
Given the nature of this case, I think it's safe to say we should all anticipate intense media scrutiny.
Yes, well, it's good to see you're doing all you can to minimize that, Earl. Given all the hoopla, I'm surprised you didn't assign a second chair.
Oh, Hugh is the second chair. I'm the lead prosecutor on this.
You mean you personally?
Hugh is a fine prosecutor, but the DA and I both felt that given the public interest in this case, the most experienced hand should be put on. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and we're here to avoid going to trial. Here's our offer. She pleads guilty to 1 felony count. We drop the other charge. We recommend that she does 2 years probation. And we'd also want some guarantee that she never teaches school again.
Are you serious?
Oh, It's a fair offer. This goes to trial. We'll be asking for the maximum on both counts. She could do 4 years.
Oh, come on. There's no evidence that this relationship, if it even existed, was anything but consensual.
That's not informed consent, is it? We like our case, Mr. Turner. We have 3 eyewitnesses. These boys are nice kids. Good, solid families, and nothing to gain by lying. Sure impressed the hell out of the grand jury.
There's also the statement she gave the police on her. She acknowledges she was in the house twice in November to help him with some personal problems.
She did it. We know she did it, and it's going to be easy to prove.
Well, I still can't take her an offer like that. She claims she's innocent.
I guess we'll see in court. Is he any good?
He was outstanding. Hasn't had a lot of trial work, though, lately.
Burnt out?
Miss Gill. I saw you on TV again.
Yeah, I'm getting to be a real celebrity, Danny. I'll tell you, it's not much fun.
Well, at least you look good. I mean, that's something, right?
What's with the books? Don't tell me you're back in summer school.
Afraid so. You all know what happens. The weather turns nice, suddenly my grades go south. You know, I was gonna ask you, you think you could help me with my homework again this summer?
Oh, gee, Danny, I don't think that's such a hot idea.
Danny!
Oh, hell.
Get in the house.
All I was doing was
now.
talking to
Get in the
her.
house. Don't talk back to me. I will deal with you later. I told you to leave him alone.
He talked to me first.
I don't care if he did talk to you. Nothing says you gotta answer. This is my
What the hell's
child.
going on?
It's okay, Roger.
Your wife was talking to my boy. I told her last time I would call the police, and I will.
Well, maybe what your boy needs is a
Roger,
leash.
that's not necessary.
Look, you're on my property, lady. Now get the hell off before I call the cops.
You know something? I cannot wait until they lock you up. People like you do not belong in decent company.
Roger.
You, get in the house.
I wish you wouldn't get into it with her, Roger. You know what she's like. Anyway, I'm glad you're home. I'm dying to call Owen.
Trial starts in 8 weeks.
You called him?
That's right. I knew he wasn't gonna be able to make any deals. I figured I'd spare you the grief.
I don't want to be spared, all right? Roger, I'm the one who's going on trial.
You sure seem relaxed about it.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, you're talking to Danny again. Despite what his mother told you, despite what I told you, you're talking to him again.
Well, he initiated it.
The law says he can't initiate anything, Paulette. The law says that you're the adult. Whatever happens is your fault.
I'm not going to stop being a human being because of what somebody might think.
All right, have it your way, Paulette. Just remember those people whose opinions you're so blithely dismissing? That's who's going to be sitting in that jury box.
I hope your coach isn't going to give you grief about missing football practice.
He doesn't have much choice. If I don't get my grades up, I won't be on the team.
You know, Kip, you have a real flair for language. Spelling, however.
I usually getting off of practice about this time. Noticed you're always still here.
A lot of kids need extra help this term.
Your husband doesn't mind? I mean, if I were married to a woman who looked like you, I'd want you home. Not hanging out with a bunch of jerky teenagers.
Roger's in grad school. He spends most of his nights at the library. You know, Kip, I encourage you guys to say whatever's on your mind. But I think some things should be off limits.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Gill. I meant it as a compliment, really.
I'm still your teacher, and I'm a married woman. Don't compliment me too much.
Hi, Miss Newbeck, Patsy Newbeck.
Yeah?
My name is Fred Cobb. I'm an investigator working for Paulette Gill. I was wondering if I might ask you a few questions. Mrs. Gill was telling me that you and she had dinner on November 17th last year.
We had dinner together lots of nights. There's not one that really sticks out. Sorry.
Miss Newbeck, Mrs. Gill also told me that when she was fired, you went to the school principal and told him that these boys had to be lying. You think we could talk a little bit about that?
All right. I'll come in for a moment.
Thank you.
Maria, por favor. Look, it's true that I went to the principal, but just to say that I didn't believe these guys. I never said that I had any first-hand information about what they might or might not have seen.
But you did have dinner with her on one of the nights in question?
I might have. I just don't remember. I'm sorry, Mr. Cobb. I don't think I'm going to be of much help.
What's going on here? Who are you?
Fred Cobb. Mr. Newbeck, is it?
He's a private investigator for Paulette, Daddy.
I think you'd better go. You have no business sneaking around the neighborhood trying to catch people off guard.
But I invited him in.
Stay out of this. My attorney is Buddy Reston of Reston and Myers. Yeah, write that down. You have any more questions for my daughter, you give him a call.
Oh, and thanks for your time, Miss Newbeck.
Let me have Evie Bashmore, please. Evie, Don Newbeck. Listen, I think it might be a good idea if we got everybody together.
Hey, let's not overreact here. It's not like she wasn't going to put on a defense.
So I spoke to Earl Cleaver, let him know what's going on. I also spoke to my own attorney, who tells me that we're under no legal obligation to cooperate.
What about witnesses planning on testifying for the prosecution?
Makes no difference. Stewie and Garrett are under 18. They can't even be contacted without your consent.
But Paul just turned 18, Don.
He still has to give his consent, Margie, unless her attorney gets a court order, which Cleaver thought was very unlikely. Would you excuse me for just a moment?
I'm so sorry you all got dragged into this.
Evie, you put that thought out of your head. Garrett has told me many times that he has no regrets.
And Stewie and Paul feel the same way.
Hey, where are you going?
Out.
Without saying hello to our guests?
I'm in a hurry.
Suit yourself. But the problem will still be here when you get back.
Look, Daddy, for the last time, I don't know anything about Paulette and Kip.
I think you do know something. The way you and that Gill woman palled around, hell, you probably know everything. Patsy, do you understand that it's not just about Kip's family anymore? Do you know that if Mrs. Gill is found not guilty, she can turn around and sue the boys and their families, our friends, for everything they own? And there's a bigger picture here, Patsy. There really is. Somebody has got to protect our way of life from sleazy influences like that. Do you understand that you go to a public school that is better and safer than most private ones? You think that happens by accident?
Well, if it happened in Briarcliff, Daddy, I'm sure you had something to do with it.
Owen?
Hey, Fredo. How'd it go this week?
Same as last. Must have talked to about 24 kids, some of the teachers, too. Nobody knows anything. Did you get through the DA's file yet?
Almost. And I'll tell you, they're not having the same trouble we are. I've defended murderers who didn't have this many people saying bad things about them. Mrs. Gill frequently wore tight-fitting sweaters to school where you could see her nipples. Mrs. Gill had parties for students in her home where she served margaritas. Mrs. Gill gave Kip VD. Roger Gill told me this thing was shaping up as a real witch hunt.
So what now?
Once you get past all the hearsay and innuendo, Cleaver's whole case really comes down to the testimony of these boys. I think our defense has to be that they are just flat out lying.
Well, what's their motive?
Well, the friend had just killed himself. Somebody had to take the heat, right?
Yeah, these boys are real Eagle Scouts, Owen. Even if they were looking for a scapegoat, it's hard to believe they'd commit perjury to do it.
Kip died on Thursday. His funeral was on Monday. That gave him 3 days to cook this thing up. From now on, I want you to see what you can find out about where they were that weekend.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I haven't seen you this worked up in quite a while, Owen.
You know, I don't mind a fair fight, but these rich folks are ganging up on our client, Fred. That irritates me.
They may be ganging up on her, but that doesn't make her innocent.
You have doubts about that?
She seems like a real nice lady. On the other hand, it's been my experience that there's usually at least a little fire at the center of this much smoke.
I don't want you to be concerned about this lack of cooperation. It's not unusual. And Cobb will keep talking to kids right through the trial.
Well, what about Patsy?
She wasn't too helpful. But calling her presented certain problems anyway.
Like what?
She's not a perfect alibi. You could have had dinner with Patsy and then gone over to Kip's. And I think we want to soft pedal your extracurricular relationship with these kids as much as possible. Now, a number of people have commented on Kip's flirtatiousness with you. I'd like to know a little more about that.
It was strictly a teasing kind of thing. For example, there was one day last term. We hadn't really spent much time together, so you can imagine my surprise when he blurts out,
I would kill the guy who would make love to you.
"What is that supposed to mean?"
That's my new pickup line, Mrs. Gill. What do you think?
I think a girl your age would probably prefer a less direct approach.
I guess I'll have to keep practicing.
Yeah.
You never reported this behavior to anyone?
If I reported every boy for every comment he'd made, I would have spent half my time in the detention office.
I understand. But subsequently, you went to his home alone in the evening. Now, the prosecution can argue that you were responding to a sexual invitation from him.
What nobody has mentioned yet is that there was another side to Kip. When he was alone with me, he was completely different. Serious, sensitive. That was the side I was interested in. I don't think he believed me.
It's not his job to believe you. That pickup line business, you never told me about that either. You never told me he said anything that overt.
Didn't I?
No?
I guess I was just embarrassed. I'm sorry. Listen, it's still light. You want to stop and get some coffee or ice cream or something?
No, Paulette. I just want to get home.
This is Jake McGee here at the San Diego County Courthouse, where the crowd is building on this the first day of Paulette Gill's sex trial.
The doors of the courthouse will soon be opening. This is Mary Kay Andrade reporting live from the San Diego County Courthouse.
This is Joe Friedman.
Okay, here's a sound check,
on
really.
this the first day of the sensational Paulette Gill sexual assault trial.
Relax, Roger. We have plenty of time.
I'm gonna wait outside.
So today's big day, huh?
Yeah, we'll be leaving for court soon.
Good luck.
Thank you. So how's school?
Well, actually, I'm running for student council. Can you believe it?
Danny, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, it's just for class rep, but, actually, I gotta give a speech this afternoon. I had to come up with a platform and everything. You wanna take a look at it?
Oh. Now's not really a good time. Besides, your mom would kill me.
She already left for work. Please, Miss Gill? It'll only take a second.
It's great.
That may be too long, though.
Oh, I like this.
And then if I gotta do a full thing...
Paulette, for crying out loud!
It's all right, Roger. His mom's at work. I'll just be 1 minute.
But you know what's great is that you're handling the job right here. So it lightens everything up and then and I want to end it here with one also. That's really good.
Kids really respond to her, huh?
Oh, yeah. My wife loves teaching Owen. She's got a real gift for it.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you state your name for the record?
My name is Evie Bauschmoyer. I live on Bridle Ridge Road with my husband Wayne and my daughter Tracy. My son Kip also lived there with us.
Mrs. Bauschmoyer, I know this is painful, but would you describe how you first learned that Kip had killed himself?
I'd picked my daughter Tracy up from school. I had just finished grocery shopping. Tracy! Is your brother in his room? That boy skipped school again. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Tracy? Tracy?
Mommy, what's happened to Kip?
He's sick, honey. Come with me. Tracy, now! Call a doctor. I called my office. I asked them to notify the authorities. I needed to deal with my daughter right then. And then I phoned my husband.
Shortly after this, people began to arrive?
Yes. By then, it had been on the news.
Did you see the defendant, Paulette Gill, at your house that night?
Yes, I did.
And at Kip's funeral the following Monday, did you see her there too?
Not at the funeral, no. But afterwards, there was an open house.
I'm Paulette Gill, Mrs. Bauschmoyer. I had Kip for English.
Well, thank you for coming. I know Kip wasn't very popular with his teachers.
Well, maybe that's because they didn't really know him. I can tell you he was very special to me.
She told you he was very special to her?
That's what she said.
No further questions.
Mrs. Bouchmoyer, isn't it true you blame this woman for the death of your son?
I wouldn't say that, no. Naturally, we wonder what influence she may have had.
Isn't it also true that when the DA's office initially declined to file charges, you called persistently until that decision was reversed?
My son had been molested, Mr. Turner.
How do you know?
I have the word of people I trust. Plus, my own impressions of her conduct at the open house.
I believe you said she came by to pay her respects, told you she'd taught your son, liked him personally, and gave you a hug.
That's correct.
What is it exactly you find so peculiar about that, ma'am?
It was obvious she thought of herself more as a friend than a teacher.
So you find it strange that she liked Kip enough to consider him a friend?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained. Mrs. Bouchmoyer, there were other teachers at Kip's funeral, weren't there?
At the funeral, not at the open house.
On the nights of November 17 and 24, do you have any knowledge of Paulette Gill coming to your home?
Well, Kip's room was at the other end of the house. We wouldn't have any idea what was going on in there.
You had a dog. Wouldn't your dog bark if a stranger came to your home at night?
I suppose she would.
Did you recall her barking on either of those nights?
No.
You think they'd at least send someone out to let us know what's going on, you know? I don't know how you guys can all be so casual about this.
Paul, come on, all right? We're all in the same boat.
Yeah. You know, it's starting to sound like you're sorry you're even here. I'm not saying that. Just real stressed out by all this, you know? Okay. Look, let's just not forget why we're here, all right?
Yeah, we're here for him, man.
That's right. We're here for Kip. Come on. I don't believe it, not for a second.
You saw how she was with me just now. The same way in class, always looking at me. Ask Paul.
She's like that with everybody.
No, she's
Right.
not. Look, I knew she was interested in me from the beginning. One night I hit on her, and she's like, oh no, I'm a teacher and I'm married. So I figured I was wrong. Then a few weeks later, she asked me to go have coffee with her. Starts telling me about how her husband doesn't understand her. That was a month ago, boys. I've been having her ever since.
Come on.
Look, I know it's hard to believe,
Well,
but
it's impossible to believe. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. This time, you gotta put your money where your mouth is.
I'm looking for Leland Groon.
Yeah, who are you?
Name's Fred Cobb. I'm a private investigator working on the Paulette Gill case. You Mr. Groom?
Yeah, that's me, but I don't know what I could tell you because I only went to school there for about a year.
Okay, thanks.
Say, how'd you happen to come talk to me?
Mrs. Gill gave me a list of students she thought might have something good to say about her.
Mrs. Gill was all right to me. She tried to get me to stay in school. I wouldn't want to testify or anything. Come on. These other guys, Garrett, Paul, and Stewie, were part of the most popular crowd in school, and Kip had been part of that crew too, but there was some kind of falling out. And it was around this time that we all started hearing rumors about him and Mrs. Gill. Then Kip kills himself. And all I know is that the night after Kip died, Garrett, Paul, and Stewie and a bunch of other kids went out to the ice house
The ice house. What's that?
It's a factory out near Miramar, and kids from school used to go out there and party, and I heard that's where they decided to make this up.
I talked to a lot of kids this summer. Why haven't I heard about this before?
Well, I know I wasn't in any rush to come forward. Personally, I don't care what people think, but my parents had just joined a country club.
No, wait a minute. Are you saying you felt that you were discouraged from coming forward?
You guys really are in the dark about this, aren't you? Kip's family and the families of the other three, they've had their own investigation going on since last year. And in Briarcliff, the word's out. You're either with them or against them.
I honestly don't see any grounds for delay, Mr. Turner.
Your Honor, I now have reason to believe that much of this new evidence that Mr. Cleaver claimed as his reason for filing charges comes from a group of citizens who have a vested interest in the outcome of this case.
As I understand it, all those people are doing are trying to protect themselves from any possible civil action from Mrs. Gill.
There's nothing illegal about that. And I hardly think the existence of this one boy proves widespread coercion, Mr. Turner.
Your Honor, this one boy's statement alone raises questions about the credibility of the rest of the boys who are going to be testifying here.
What possible reason could I have for filing charges if I had any questions about their credibility?
Well, it got Evie Bauschmeyer off your back, didn't it, Earl? The way I figure it, this trial's a win-win proposition for you.
My job is simple. I look at the evidence and I look at the statute. If I get a match, I prosecute.
Your request for continuance is denied. The only thing that's relevant here is where the defendant was on the nights of November 17th and 24th. And that's what we're going to find out right now. Proceed with your witness.
Mr. Preston, what was your reaction when Kip Bauschmeyer first told you of his relationship with Mrs. Gill?
It just didn't seem possible. I mean, I'd seen the way they were in class, and I knew she liked him. But I still thought, she's a teacher, no way.
How did Kip respond to your disbelief, Mr. Preston?
He said, I guess I'm just going to have to prove it to you then.
Let's talk about the weekend of November 17th. You and Garrett had been over there during the day?
Yes, sir. Kip told us that she was coming over that night and asked if we would go help set up his room so that we could see.
And what were some of these preparations?
His window was kind of high up, so we had to stack some paving stones to stand on. And he had these curtains that we had to rig so that we could see better.
And what happened after you finished setting up his room, Paul?
We went home. And then later I picked Garrett up and we drove back over to Kip's. I knew what kind of car Mrs. Gill drove because I'd seen it a bunch of times at school. It was parked right where Kip had said it would be. Now, at this point, we're thinking maybe she's just over there talking to him, right? But on the way up to the house, I started to get cold feet. I said I didn't want to go, so Garrett went first. I was scared we'd be caught. And then after a minute, he comes back and he says, somebody's about to do something to somebody. And that's when I went up to the window.
When you first looked through the window, what did you observe, Paul? Exactly.
I saw my best friend, Kip Bauschmeyer, and my teacher, Mrs. Gill, having sex.
Your witness, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Preston. Yesterday, you described preparations you made in order to better see Kip and the defendant having sex. For example, you stacked up some stepping stones. Do you recall why you did that?
It made it easier to see.
Your Honor, may I? Would you step over here, please? Right here. Now, I want you to imagine that the jury box is Kip's bed. Earlier, some photos were introduced indicating that the bedroom window is 5 feet from the base of the house. How tall are you, Paul?
I'm 5'10".
5'10". Now, I want you to look at the jury while I measure out 5 feet.
Yeah, Garrett's shorter, I think.
Actually, he's an inch taller, but okay. I'll measure out 2 more inches. I'd like the record to reflect that I measured out 5 feet 2 inches, and yet Mr. Preston can still see the jury easily over the top. Can't you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You can sit back down. Now, when you were before the grand jury, you testified that after Kip and Mrs. Gill had made love, he turned the lights off to signal that they were finished. Do you recall that being part of the plan?
Yes, that's right. He said, when I turn the lights off, you guys have to leave.
So what you're saying is they made love with the lights on, and then when they were ready to go, he turned the lights off and they got dressed in the dark.
Yeah, well, maybe a lot of the stuff we did wasn't necessary, but it's not like any of us had any experience with this kind of thing.
That'd be one explanation. Another might be that you guys made up the story and then never got around to going over to Kip's house to see if it checked out.
That's not true. And we never discussed this among ourselves until after we gave our statements to the school.
Have you ever heard of a place called the Ice House, Mr. Preston?
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's a place kids from school used to hang out sometimes.
And weren't you hanging out there the weekend after Kip died, along with Garrett Evans, Stuart Cardell, and several others?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I suppose we were. Yeah.
And Kip had just committed suicide, and yet the subject of what you had all witnessed between Kip and Paulette Gill never came up. Is that your testimony, Mr. Preston?
Mr. Cardell, could you please tell us what happened on the weekend of November 24th?
The weekend of November 24th, Paul and I were staying over at Kip's house. His parents had already gone to bed. We were just getting ready to watch video when the phone rings.
And what time was this?
About 11:30. So Kip's on the phone for a couple minutes. When he gets off, he's got this great big grin on his face. And he says to Paul, it's on again for tonight. At that point, they told me that Mrs. Gill and Kip had sex the weekend before.
And what did you think of all this, Mr. Cardell?
I believed it. I had her as a teacher. You could say I'd seen her in action.
Order. Let's leave the humor to the lawyers, Mr. Cardell. Please proceed.
So anyway, Paul and I go outside to wait. About 10 minutes later, she shows up. I watch for 45 minutes, maybe.
Now, how was Mrs. Gill as a teacher?
She was okay.
She actually went out of her way to give you a lot of extra help, didn't she?
Yeah.
Did she ever make any sexual overtures to you?
No.
So when you say that her actions contributed to your conclusion that Kip and Paul were telling the truth, what are you talking about?
It was just a feeling I got.
After Mrs. Gill left, did you guys talk about what had just happened?
You know, I don't think we ever really talked about it until after we gave our statements to the school.
You mean even at Kip's funeral? And when you were all together the night he died, you didn't talk about it?
I don't believe so.
What about when you were all out at the Ice House, Mr. Cardell?
No.
But you were out at the ice house together, weren't you?
He's killing us with this ice house business. Yeah, we were there.
No further questions.
Let's hold Garrett back for now. I want to interview him again. I want you to call Don Newbeck, tell him it's time to fish or cut bait.
Got it. Any redirect, Mr. Cleaver?
Sorry, Your Honor. In view of the hour, Your Honor, the state requests a recess until tomorrow.
You were great today. Now, that's not just my opinion. The whole press corps is talking about how you're kicking their butts.
Well, it's early yet, but thanks, Bobby.
So why the long face?
I guess I'm still bugged by the way Cleaver stood by while the town held its inquisition.
Oh, don't be such a Boy Scout. The people in Briarcliff want justice, and if they're in a position to pull some strings, I say more power to them. That's just how the system operates.
Yeah, well, may I remind you, you and I are part of the system.
Yeah, and I've seen you work that system plenty to put some really awful people back on the street.
Yeah.
Who always says winning is all that matters?
The first day I went to pick them up for court, the boy across the street came over to ask Paulette's help for a project at school. I mean, here she was about to enter the arena, yet she was willing to take the time to help some kid with his homework. That's when I knew. This woman cares too much about teaching to get involved in anything like this.
I think you're being a little naive about her. I mean, even nice people can rationalize almost anything in the name of passion. Look at us. Roger? Roger?
You know, it occurred to me I haven't cooked for you in ages, so I decided to whip up a special batch of my stir fry. Come here.
This is really sweet of you.
Like it? Sit.
Thank you.
Let's go in. Would you like some champagne, my dear, huh?
Champagne, too?
It's either that or Diet cranberry juice. Decided to live dangerously.
I really appreciate the thought. But I don't think I could get down a bite of food.
Well, maybe what you need is to work up a little appetite. Huh? Come here. You look beautiful. Oh, stepping on your feet, am I?
I don't feel very attractive right now.
Oh, you are, believe me. It's okay.
I'm really not up for this right now. Roger, please. Please be patient with me.
As the boys' vice principal, it was my decision to transfer Kip Boschmeyer into her class. And Miss Gill ran a somewhat informal classroom, but I thought the boy might do better in that environment.
Did he?
At first he did. But then I kept hearing that she was keeping him after class a couple times every week.
Objection. Your Honor, this is blatantly misleading. There is no offer of proof that anything but studying went on at these after-school sessions.
Let me see you two lawyers up here right now. Mr. Cleaver, what is your theory of admissibility on this?
Given her informal manner and her willingness to meet with him one-on-one, Kip no doubt saw these after-school sessions as an open invitation.
To do what? Study?
I'm going to sustain the objection.
As long as we're here, Your Honor, it's my understanding that the testimony of the next three witnesses goes exclusively to the issue of whether or not Mrs. Gill's attire in school was too provocative.
Again, Judge, it's our contention that her relationship with Kip was just part of a whole range of unacceptable conduct.
Perhaps. But I'm not going to allow her to be convicted of sexual assault based on what she wore to work. Now, do you have any other questions for this witness?
No.
Step back.
Mr. Garcia, you're excused.
Thank you.
You have any other witnesses you can call at this time?
We do, Your Honor. She's not on our list, having only recently come forward, but she is in the building and ready to testify.
Call your witness, Mr. Cleaver.
The state calls Patricia Newbeck.
Please proceed.
Miss Newbeck, your relationship with the defendant was more than the usual teacher-student relationship, wasn't it?
We were also close friends, yeah.
How did your friendship come about?
At first, it was based on my schoolwork. And then as we discovered we had mutual interests, we started hanging out together outside of school.
You mean you would socialize in each other's homes, maybe go out to eat?
Yes.
I'd like to call your attention to the night of November 17th, 1992. Do you recall where you were between 9 and 11 that night?
Paulette and I had dinner at Joy Garden. It's a Chinese restaurant near school.
Do you recall the conversation?
Yes, I do.
You asked my opinion, Patsy, and I'm telling you, I don't think you should be giving Bobby that kind of commitment.
We really love each other. Why is it so hard for everybody to understand?
I understand. I was in college. I was dating Roger. I was in love. And now here it is a few years later. And people don't always evolve in the same direction.
God, Paulette, you and Roger aren't having problems, are you?
I love Roger, but I don't think either of us really...
She went on to say that since Roger had started grad school, he had gotten totally caught up in his work. She said he was distracted and losing interest in her.
And had another complication in the Gill marriage developed at this time?
Yes. Paulette told me she might be falling in love with Kip Bauschmeyer.
Did she say what those feelings were based on?
Kip was crazy about her. He was always interested in everything she had to say.
Was it your impression that those feelings had been acted upon?
That's how the subject came up. Paulette had a date with Kip that night, and she wanted me to cover for her.
If my teacher looked like that, I probably would have killed myself, too.
You know what she said when they caught her?
No, what's that?
Just cramming for an exam. What are you, crazy?
Just two more questions. Would you say you were also close friends with Garrett Evans, Stuart Cardell, or Paul Preston?
No, I'm not friends with their group at all.
Have you ever been to the Ice House?
I don't even know where that is.
Thank you. No further questions.
Miss Newbeck, you knew Kip Bauschmeyer pretty well, didn't you?
Our families were close, yes.
Initially, you were one of Mrs. Gill's strongest supporters. You told the school principal, your parents, anyone who would listen, that you thought Paulette Gill was not guilty of these charges.
That's true.
What prompted you to change your story?
Paulette and I were friends, but I felt that what she had done was wrong, so I decided I couldn't support her anymore.
When was that?
I don't remember exactly.
Miss Newbeck, this is a statement you made to the district attorney's office in April of this year. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
And you told the district attorney's office you had no relevant information, didn't you?
Yes.
And when my investigator, Mr. Cobb, spoke to you last July and asked you about having dinner with Mrs. Gill, what did you say?
I told him I couldn't remember.
Miss Newbeck, let me direct your attention again to your April statement. What did you tell the DA was your reason for accepting the interview? Shall I read it to you, Miss Newbeck?
I said the only reason I was there was because my father had been bugging me.
And the reason he was bugging you was that he didn't believe you when you told him that you thought Paulette Gill was innocent of these charges. And as it turned out,
Your father's instinct that you're a liar proved to be correct, didn't it?
What's important is that I'm telling the truth now.
No further questions.
The guy you pushed was a lawyer. Owen got him to not press charges.
Oh, that's a load off my mind.
Owen also thinks it might be a good idea if you stayed away from the courthouse for a while.
Owen thinks, huh? What do you think?
That depends on whether you think you can control your temper, Roger.
There was no loss of control, Paulette. I saw a chance to defend your honor for the first time since this whole business began. And I took it.
If you'd like to listen, I'd like to try to explain about Patsy.
Did you discuss our problems with her or not?
She took things I said at different times out of context.
What context could there possibly be for talking to this girl about our marriage? You know, I never liked the way you were with those kids. How accessible you made yourself. But I didn't say anything because I figured that was your call. And because I never dreamed that what you were sharing were intimate details of our family life, Paulette.
When kids come to you, asking advice and sharing their secrets, you find yourself responding in kind. Is that such a crime?
It depends on how far it went, I guess, huh?
Are you asking if it's all true?
No, but when they say you didn't keep your distance, they're not wrong, are they? You did cross over the line, and you brought this down on us as surely as if you had slept with him.
Maybe it's not such a bad idea if you did stay away from court.
Well, I wish I didn't have to go to court, believe me. Our friends in the press, they'd have a field day.
I don't care much about appearances right now.
Well, I do. I'm not going to give those bastards any satisfaction.
Let me spell it out for you. I don't want you there anymore. If that's the only reason you have for coming.
How long did you watch the defendant and Kip having sexual intercourse, Mr. Evans?
About a half hour, of which I was at the window maybe 10 minutes altogether.
Now, why is it that you decided not to tell anybody about what you'd seen prior to Kip's death?
Oh, Kip asked us not to. He was worried about getting Mrs. Gill in trouble. And I think also we felt a little ashamed.
Now, this place, the Ice House, you and your friends did go out there.
Yes, sir, the night after he died.
Did you and Stuart Cardell and Paul Preston conspire to make up this story at the Ice House, Mr. Evans?
That would have been impossible, sir. We went to the Ice House on Friday. By then, I'd already told my mother and some other police officers what I knew.
No further questions.
All Garrett's testimony really proves is that he was the first one to tell the story. We can argue that he was the ringleader, but it hurt us. And as for Patsy Newbeck, well,
Can't we call Leland Gruen?
unfortunately, his story about the Ice House isn't a first-hand account and wouldn't be admissible. Cobb can't find anyone who will admit that they were actually there. Paulette, this whole thing is going to come down to your testimony. So I want you to really focus on that. When you get up there tomorrow, I want you to tell your story simply and straightforwardly. Do that, and I think the jury will believe you.
Will they? You didn't.
Well, maybe I've just defended too many guilty people. But I have to believe that when that jury really looks at you, they'll see what I saw when I finally opened my eyes. An innocent woman falsely accused.
Good night, Owen.
Okay, a quarter past the hour. Here's the 5-day forecast for Southern California. Mostly clear through this period, except for areas of night influential clouds and fog near the coast. That's what we need again. Lows overnight of 52, highs expected in the daytime of 72. A little bit warmer inland, of course. And looking ahead now for the next 5 days, we expect temperatures to remain in the mid-70s with some rain likely early next week. We'll be right back after this message.
Mr. Gill, we haven't met. I'm Roberta Rosen with the San Diego Ledger.
You media people seem pretty chummy with Mrs. Boschmoyer. Ever ask her what she's doing here? Witnesses aren't allowed in the courtroom, but she comes to the courthouse every day. Ever ask yourself what it means?
I think it helps her cope with the loss of her son. I came out here to give you equal time.
Yeah, well, our lawyer advised us not to speak with the press.
Then you can't complain about the kind of press you're getting, can you?
And that's it, huh? You think saying that absolves you of responsibility?
You think there's some questions we ought to be asking?
How about asking what I'm doing here? Why would I possibly stick by Paulette if there was any truth to these charges?
Boy, you haven't been sticking by her lately, have you? Your attorney told us you came down with the flu. You seem pretty healthy to me.
You know, maybe I haven't handled myself as well as I could have. But I'm not a public figure. I'm just a guy that sells computers. And my wife is a woman whose only plan in life was to get married and raise a family and teach school. Before you make any judgments about us, why don't you ask yourself what your life would look like if it was put under a microscope? I love my wife, Miss Rosen. Excuse me.
Mr. Turner, are you ready to proceed?
The defense calls Paulette Gill.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mrs. Gill, why did you decide to become a teacher?
I'd always admired my own teachers, and I liked working with kids.
And how long had you been at Briarcliff High School when you met Kip Bouchmoyer?
About 2 years.
We heard testimony that the decision to transfer Kip to your class was based on the idea that you and he would have a rapport. Is that your recollection?
Not really. I think it had more to do with the fact that I was the most junior member of the department, and Kip had a reputation of being a troublemaker.
Was that reputation well-deserved?
Make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse. That
I think he was misunderstood. Teachers sometimes forget that while you're testing the kids, they're also testing you.
Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall.
I'm not saying we didn't have our moments, but overall, I think we did end up with a pretty good rapport.
We also heard testimony that you spent time with kids outside of school. How do you account for that?
All I can say is that I grew up in a very small town where our teachers were our neighbors, people we saw at church. So it just seemed natural to me. And it was just a couple of students like Patsy that I felt particularly close to.
And was Kip another one of those students?
Not at first, but there came a time when Kip began to seek me out on a more individual basis.
Do you recall what brought that on?
It was around the time when he was kicked off the football team.
It's not fair. They said all I needed to do was get a passing average, not pass every class.
Hey, did you hear? Kip's off the team. Yeah, of course I heard. I'm co-captain, aren't I? That's a tough break, man.
Just hate letting you guys down while the team's on such a roll.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it, Kip. I'm not saying we couldn't use you on the team, man. Just don't act like you're indispensable or something.
Why are you always hassling me, man?
Because someone's got to let a little air out. Otherwise, you'd float away under that big head of yours. Guys, let's go. Blim said he'd give us a ride.
Missed you in class today, Kip.
Hey, Miss Gill. I had to go down to the principal's office, get this thing with my grades straightened out. I told him what he needed to do was get some more teachers like Mrs. Gill. If they were all as pretty as her, the whole football team would be on the honor roll.
What are you doing right now?
And when we were all little, I was the one who could run the fastest or climb the bigger tree. Garrett was just a little squirt, but I always included him. Now it's the other way around. The guy gives me nothing but grief.
Well, maybe being co-captain has just gone to his head.
No, he's just got it in for me. Stewie and Paul, they go whichever way the wind blows.
In my opinion, being kicked off the football team isn't the worst thing that could have happened. You have more going for you than you realize, Kip.
Yeah? Like what?
Like the side of you I see right now. Your serious side. I like it, and I'd like to see more of it.
You know, I never thought I could talk to a teacher like this.
After that, he started calling me at home. I hadn't given him my number, but other kids had it, and it was listed.
Now, at one point, you did have occasion to go to his home. Would you please tell the jury what prompted that?
About a month after we had coffee, Kip called me one evening, very upset. Hello?
Mrs. Gill, I need to see you.
Kip, what's the matter?
Please. So when they thought my grades were going up, they bought me a car, right? You saw it in the driveway. Then I didn't do too well on my midterms. Now they're gonna take the keys.
Do you even have your license yet?
That's not the point. I mean, it's just something else for them to hold over my head. Meantime, Paul had a big party. Never even called me. Life's a mess. I don't get a car. Might as well go into exile. I'm adopted. Did I ever tell you that? I am. My older brother got all A's in school. Dad always asking me why I couldn't be more like Michael. Of course, Mike's their natural son. Let's see, that makes me what? The unnatural son?
I'm sure your father doesn't feel that way. What about your mom?
They just don't get it. Not like you do. You're the only person I can really talk to.
All I can tell you, Kip, is that it gets better. Eventually, you'll be out on your own, and the cars, and your parents, and what your friends think will seem pretty unimportant.
Just don't know if I can wait till then. Let's talk about January. You began to hear rumors that you and Kip were lovers. What did you make of that?
When you're around kids that age, you hear a lot of wild stories. But then somebody told me that Kip himself was the one who had started the rumors.
And how did that make you feel?
Used? Betrayed? When I asked him about it, of course he denied it.
And why didn't you report him to the principal, Mrs. Gill?
At the time, I thought if I spoke to him myself, it would put a stop to it.
Did it?
No. I learned later that he continued to tell his friends that we were sleeping together.
Paulette knows you're
Until finally there was a confrontation.
You say a word to
What are you
anybody.
gonna do, Kip? Hit me?
What are you gonna do, Kip? She just called you a liar. You're not gonna let her get away with that, are you?
She can say whatever the hell she wants to say. It's true about me and Mrs. Gill. You guys all saw the proof.
This is your proof? A pair of women's underwear you could have bought anywhere?
Hey! Whoa! These have that freshly bought look now, don't they?
Give me those.
Oh, hey!
Give them to me.
Yeah, right.
Give them to me.
Hey,
Give them.
teach his underwear.
Give them to me.
Oh, hey, I'm
Give me those. Give them to me. Give me them.
We always knew you were full of crap anyway.
What's the matter?
Think you know?
Kip, I've had a long day. I don't have time to play guessing games.
I'm talking about Patsy. She comes up to me today in front of everybody and accuses me of spreading rumors about us. I can't believe you put her up to that.
I didn't put her up to it, Kip. You told me you didn't start the rumor. I accept that. Let's just leave it there.
There was more to it, though. Guess you can't blame people for talking. But that's the way it always goes for me. As soon as I get close to a girl, she backs off.
Kip, listen to me. There was never anything more between us than friendship. And there was never going to be.
That's great, Miss Gill. Are you saying that I'm not even a little bit special to you?
That was the last time that I saw Kip. And 3 days later, he killed himself.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
So it's your testimony that you never had sexual relations with Kip Bauschmoyer.
Yes, it is.
But you do admit to visiting him in his home after hours on 2 occasions.
Yes.
Oh, it's an interesting coincidence, wouldn't you say? These 3 boys say you went over there twice. You say you went over there twice. Can you account for this similarity in both stories?
No, I can't. All I can figure is that maybe Kip told them that I had been over there as part of his proof that we were sleeping together.
Do you deny having dinner with Patsy Newbeck on November 17th?
Not the way she described it. We had dinner, yes.
Oh, I see. So once again, only the sex part is a lie.
Your Honor, I think we can all do without Mr. Cleaver's sidebar editorializing.
I agree. Watch your tone, Mr. Cleaver.
Sorry, Your Honor. Mrs. Gill, about these problems you say you were helping Kip with. You have some training that qualifies you to counsel troubled kids?
No special training, no.
The school has guidance counselors, don't they? Couldn't you have referred Kip to one of them? Or told his parents that he was having difficulty?
Some of his problems had to do with his family, Mr. Cleaver. So no, I didn't think that was appropriate.
And when you realized Kip was developing romantic feelings for you, you also declined to tell anyone in authority. Was that because you were afraid of being asked what you'd done to lead him on?
Perhaps that was part of it?
Because you had led him on?
Because women get asked that question a lot.
Mrs. Gill, let's talk about the second time you went to visit Kip at his home. I noticed you didn't have much to say about that on direct examination.
There wasn't much to tell. It was pretty much the same as the first time. He called me. He sounded upset. I picked him up. We drove around. When he calmed down, I brought him home.
Mrs. Gill, your own testimony proves this was a far different encounter. Because by then you knew that this young boy was interested in a lot more than hand-holding, didn't you?
Yes, I knew he had a crush on me.
And yet you went to see him anyway. You, a married woman, a teacher. This student calls you, and you rush right over there. You drop whatever you're doing. Now, would you do that if you didn't have some feeling for him?
He sounded like he was in trouble, Mr. Cleaver.
No, Mrs. Gill. I submit you went because you cared for him, too.
All right, Mr. Cleaver, I admit it. I cared. It's hard not to care about a kid who wants to be liked so much. And yes, looking back, I think that maybe it wasn't the greatest idea to go over there. But at the time when he called me, begging me, please come, Mrs. Gill, you're the only person in the world I can talk to, I didn't stop to think,
Your Honor.
Gee, what's everyone gonna think? I just went.
Your Honor.
I cared.
Mrs. Gill.
I thought good teachers were supposed to care.
Gill. That's enough now. Mrs. Gill, do you need a moment?
I can go on.
Mr. Cleaver.
At this time, I have no further questions. Ladies and gentlemen, during jury selection, I asked each of you what you thought we should expect of our teachers. Each of you indicated that you expected teachers not only to teach, but also to be role models, to provide examples. Measuring from that standard, it's clear that Paulette Gill failed in her responsibility to the students in her care. She claims she drew the line at intimacy. But 3 young men from this town say otherwise. The defense has not produced a single witness who can explain what would motivate 3 boys of outstanding reputation to come in here and lie to you. On the other hand, many witnesses can testify to the fact that time after time, this defendant crossed over the line to what many people would consider unacceptable conduct. She herself admits she met with Kip repeatedly outside of school. Is it possible that this attractive, sexually sophisticated woman did not comprehend the effect this would have on an inexperienced young boy? Let us send a message that in this town, traditional standards of decency are still the measure of behavior, and that those who don't adhere to those standards will be punished. If you apply common sense as well as the law, I am confident that you will conclude that Paulette Gill is guilty of sexual assault. Thank you.
From the beginning, I felt that the most extraordinary thing about this case was that it was being prosecuted at all. She was intimate with him. That's what they say. Maybe Kip and Paulette did have a kind of intimacy, the kind that occurs when one person reaches out to another person and says, "You're not alone." And the state has suggested that this case represents a sign of the times. I agree. I think that the prosecution of this woman suggests that we have reached an age when simple human kindness is so rare that those who act out of it come under immediate suspicion, particularly by the people who, in this case, were unable to do what Mrs. Gill was able to do, reach this boy. And it is my opinion that they want to blame her for his death because their only alternative is to blame themselves. As to why these young men lied, I can only speculate. Maybe in the wake of Kip's death, they honestly wondered if there wasn't something to his story after all. Maybe they felt guilty. And if the price of easing that guilt was the reputation of this teacher, this outsider, well, so be it. Remember, folks, they could not have foreseen it would come to this. They simply told their parents, who called the police, who informed the school. Somebody tipped the press off, and here we are, deciding the fate of this woman on the basis of this same absurd, childish story. It has come to this because at every step of the way, people who should have known better stood by and did nothing. Well, I submit to you now, and it's high time somebody in this case stood up and did the right thing. And I'm sure that you will. Thank you.
relax. They have 2 weeks of testimony to go over. I'll be very surprised if we hear anything before tomorrow. Paulette, I've just been informed by the Bouchmoyers' attorney the Bouchmoyers are filing a civil action against you.
On what grounds?
I haven't had a chance to go through it. I'm sure they've cooked up some theory of how Paulette deprived them of their son. Paulette, now this is really a nonsense suit.
No, it's not. This thing is never gonna end.
It's all right.
No, it's not.
I love you, Paulette. We'll get through this.
I'd just like to say that money is not the issue here. My concern is that this woman not be allowed to teach anywhere else. My son Kip is gone. But what about the other kids that are still out there? What do they have to look up to? What are their teachers representing to them?
Mrs. Bouchmoyer, isn't this lawsuit a little inconsistent with your testimony last week when you said that you did not blame Mrs. Gill for Kip's death?
Well, since then, new information has come to light. Mrs. Gill's own testimony shows that such an influence existed.
Ma'am, are you just looking for a scapegoat?
That's not the kind of people we are.
Jury's back.
Let's go. Hurry up, you're back. Hurry up, let's go.
Michael, come on, let's get it go, guys.
All rise. Be seated.
What do you suppose it means, jury only being gone an hour?
It means they had their minds made up before they went out.
Will the defendant please rise? Madam Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
In the matter of the state of California versus Paulette Gill, we, the jury, find the defendant Paulette Gill not guilty.
The jury has spoken, and we accept their decision. Now, you'll have to excuse me.
Okay. Oh, Paulette, you decide you want to get your teaching credentials back, let me know.
Oh, I'll never teach again.
Well, why don't we get the credentials back, and then you can think it over.